All right, there are two big headlines this morning. So let's bring in Bobby Ghosh, CNN Global Affairs analyst and the managing editor of Quartz, and David Gartenstein-Ross, counterterrorism analyst and a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. We have that Homeland Security is really worried about lone wolves and their inability to control it. So we're going to discuss that. But the headline about what happened with Osama Bin Laden. Seymour Hersh is a very famous investigative reporter going back to Vietnam and a My Lai massacre there and what happened at Abu Ghraib. We learned in large part first from Hersh, and there's been a lot else along the way. So the headline is that the story that you've heard about what happened in the raid and killing of Osama bin Laden is not true. Now, David, have you ever heard any of these theories or narratives or distinctions that Hersh is coming out with before? You ever heard chatter about this?
There was some dispute going back to the very beginning when the bin Laden raid occurred as to what actually happened with the raid. But what Seymour Hersh is putting forward is basically a very thinly sourced account. He has a number of anonymous sources who have a strikingly alternative history of what occurred. I know a number of people who are very close to the events, and all of them thoroughly dispute his account. Some of it is demonstrably false, including his assertion that the bin Laden documents don't exist from the Abbottabad raid. There are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people who've seen those documents. So I think he has a lot of explaining to do as to why people should find his account credible, given the lack of any sources on the record to corroborate it.
The main theory that is advanced in his reporting, Bobby, is that this was no surprise on Pakistan. Pakistan knew Osama bin Laden was there. They put him there. They were holding him as leverage, and that a senior intelligence official basically delivered all the information necessary to the U.S., and basically they just walked in and took him. It wasn't a big firefight. The whole narrative is bogus.
Well, we knew some of this to be true. And there have been others who've said recently, including one of the Pakistani former intelligence chiefs who's quoted in Hersh's story, that the Pakistani government knew he was there and that they were keeping him there for reasons that they figured was their convenience. That part, I don't have a problem with. I think a lot of people right from the beginning have suspected, have thought it absurd that bin Laden could be there in Abbottabad without the Pakistani government knowing. Everything after that, I have some problems with. The idea that the U.S. government would trust the Pakistanis with the knowledge of the raid, would say to them that we're coming, look the other way, I find that very hard. I would not have trust. I don't imagine the Obama administration would trust the Pakistanis, knowing that the Pakistanis had been keeping this man there for such a long time. So why would they give them advance notice when there was a high likelihood that the Pakistanis would go and remove him and the helicopters would turn up there and find nobody there?
The big plus minus on this, David, is, as Bobby's laying out, it's always been weird that Osama bin Laden was where he was. You know, we always thought he was hiding in a cave somewhere, people like you trying to track him down. And it turns out he's in a major city right next to their equivalent of West Point. That's always been a tantalizing unknown. But for this to be true, a lot of people had to lie. And for what reason, David?
Well, right. Look, it's the specifics of what Hersh is claiming occurred, not so much the notion that the Pakistanis had to have known. As Bobby said, this is something that a lot of people, including former U.S. officials, like very high-ranking, it's been said by people at the cabinet level that the Pakistanis had to have known, meaning that someone within the Pakistani establishment had knowledge. As to why people would lie if Hersh's account is correct, it's a very difficult thing to explain, down to, as I mentioned before, the notion that all of the documents taken in the Abbottabad raid were simply false. I mean, when people are there, one of the most basic things you do when conducting a raid of this kind is conduct document exploitation. Why is it that the SEAL team would not conduct basic document exploitation and would only throw a few books in a garbage bag, which is what Hersh claims? And if so, why are there more than 1 million documents that were recovered during the course of this raid? Why do they exist? If, as he claims, no such document exploitation ever occurred. Now, he claims that they got these documents from the Pakistanis, but again, that doesn't hold up, in that if you talk to people who are familiar with the documents, a lot of them say that the Pakistanis do not come off particularly well, including in the most recent round of releases that occurred during a criminal trial in which bin Laden was talking about reaching out to the Pakistanis. So there's a lot here that just doesn't doesn't hold up in Hirsch's story.
Well, we're going to go through it even more with reporting from Peter Bergen, who's been all over this situation. He went to the compound in Abbottabad, and we will relay his reporting about what he saw there and how it sizes up with Hirsch. But let's get to this other headline real quick, Bobby. To have Jay Johnson, you know, our guy who's protecting the U.S. here at home, say this lone wolf risk is real, and it is hard for us to stay in front of it. The urgency of it is new, and what is the message to people?
Well, the message is that that ISIS is now taking on from where Al-Qaeda left off and is acting very, very quickly. It is sort of reaching out through the internet and to potential converts and saying to them, you do whatever chaotic thing that you can possibly do, and we will take credit for it. It is acting in a sort of very almost sort of in a predatory fashion like this. It is not new. This is something that goes back several years with Al-Qaeda, particularly Al-Qaeda in Yemen. But ISIS has shown that it is able to take the internet to a new level as a propaganda tool. We saw that very recently in Texas, and we've seen that, of course, in Paris and other places. The sense of urgency that he's trying to communicate is well felt across the intelligence community, not just here in the U.S. I was recently a couple of weeks ago in London. It's very palpable there. People there really worry that these guys, that ISIS knows how to use social media particularly in a way that we've not seen before.
No longer about an organization and command and control and actual recruiting and operatives. It's just a brand now that anybody can identify with.
Yeah.
David Gartenstein-Ross, thank you very much for helping us understand what we need to be skeptical about with regard to the Osama Bin Laden reporting, and also, Bobby, to you to help us understand